Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. And on this edition of Vegas Hockey Hub, we are going to be discussing the resurgence of William Karlsson, how Wild Bill has turned around his career with your Vegas Golden Knights. And we'll start out with kind of giving a little bit of the background, and then we will get into the actual meat and potatoes and really break down this past season involving William Karlsson. This is going to be a real fun episode, and we are going to talk about an original misfit and how he started at an all-time high, then got to an all-time low, and is now back to being at a high with the Vegas Golden Knights. So this is going to be a fun episode, and I can't wait to talk about all of this here on Vegas Hockey Hub. And you see, what's interesting is that when you're talking about William Karlsson, you have to start from the very beginning to really give a full picture about William Karlsson. I mean, let me take you back. 2017 NHL expansion draft. William Karlsson is with the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's a bottom six forward, someone who, he does have some potential in Columbus, but the most points he had ever had up to that point was 25 points, and that was in a single season. Vegas takes William Karlsson, and there was a couple of things added to William Karlsson being taken. It wasn't like William Karlsson was a household name when he was taken in that 2017 NHL expansion draft. But what happens is that Wild Bill William Karlsson, thanks to his line mates and the fact that you had Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault, William Karlsson would become a household name by the end of 2018. He would score over 40 goals in one season and would have that franchise record up until Jonathan Marchessault this past season. He would have over 35 assists, which, interesting enough, he only had 30 in the two previous seasons combined with Columbus, definitely breaking that career high, and then 78 points in one season. I mean, William Karlsson in the first year really planted his flag as a key figure with the Vegas Golden Knights. But that's year one. What's it gonna be for William Karlsson moving forward? Well, after having that 78-point season, he would be in the playoffs that year, put up respectable numbers, 7 goals and about 15 points when they lose in the Stanley Cup final that year to Washington. So how is he going to continue that momentum? How is he going to continue to progress? Well, that next season, the 2018-2019 season, William Karlsson's stats would go down, but William Karlsson would end up playing every single game for the second year in a row. He would score over 20 goals, which was good for William Karlsson. All right, over 20 goals, that's good. But when you compare it to over 40 that he had the year before, the fact that it was nearly chopped in half, that was something that was a bit unfortunate for William Karlsson. He ended up having around the same amount of assists as the year before, which shows some solid, that shows some solid continuity. He can put up around 30 to 35 assists per year. That's good. He cracked over 55 points on the year, which for a normal situation, over 55 points in 82 games, that is a solid contributor. That's something that you would want on the Golden Knights. But what ended up happening is that he had such a great breakout year the year previously. He was the Lady Byng winner when it came to the awards. He won the Lady Byng. He had received votes when it came to the Selke Trophy. So William Karlsson regressed when it came to the average person, okay? All of his stats went down from the year before. And then in the 2018-2019 playoffs, he plays in all 7 games, but he has 2 goals in 7 games, which was fine, but it wasn't great. So what ends up happening is that offseason, William Karlsson ends up as a arbitration. And after arbitration, William Karlsson, he would get the extension that he was looking for. As William Karlsson, and this is actually due to George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon. This is when Kelly McCrimmon is just starting to become the head as the general manager, and George McPhee would go to the president of hockey operations. But William Karlsson at that time would sign an 8-year deal worth $47 million with a cap hit just under $6 million. And when he signed this deal, it was a good signing at the time. You got to remember, he was an RFA who filed arbitration, and he ended up getting that 8-year deal with the Vegas Golden Knights. But what ended up happening is that because he signed that deal, he ended up putting a lot of this pressure on himself moving forward. Was he going to be able to live up to that contract? Well, the next 3 years of William Karlsson would unfortunately be the low point that I'm going to be discussing here. So after having 2 seasons of a really high and then a high mark for William Karlsson, this is where the decline of Wild Bill would end up happening with the Vegas Golden Knights. As in the 2019-2020 season, he would only have 15 goals in 63 games. So he went from 43 goals down to 24 and then down to 15. I'm using hockeyreference.com as my statistics for all this research. But his assists would stay the same. He had just around 30 assists on the year. So the one constant of William Karlsson this entire time was the amount of assists that he had. I also want to remind you, Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault are essentially his line mates throughout this entire thing. And I also want to say he's still receiving votes for the Lady Byng Trophy. The first 2 seasons, he received votes for the Selke Trophy at that time. But what happens in the playoffs that year? Well, in the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs, where the Vegas Golden Knights, during the bubble, get to the Western Conference Finals, William Karlsson would get half a point per game with 4 goals and 10 points in 20 games. So, playoff-wise, he had 30 points in 47 games. So, it's respectable as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. He is a contributor at this point. But what some people were starting to ask is, okay, he's going on a downward trajectory, okay? He started out at 78 points. Then he goes to 56 points. And then he signs this brand new contract. He's going to be making $5.9 million, just shy of $6 million. And in that first year, 46 points. Okay. Can he keep this up? Can he find a way to make everything start to look upward? Well, year 2 of William Karlsson's contract is a wash. And let me explain what I mean. This is the shortened COVID year where they only played 56 games instead of 82. So his stats were going to go down based off the fact that they're playing 25 less games than they did the year before. Now, that being said, in that COVID-shortened season, he would play all 56 games. He would rack up 14 goals, which he had 15 goals the year prior, but when I consider the fact that it was 56 games, 14 goals, that's respectable. That would have actually been on pace to be around a 20-goal score by the end of the season. So he was going to be around that pace. He had 25 assists. That was lower than the year before, but once again, I take this into account. 25 assists and 56 games means that he would have been around 35 assists in 82 games. So William Karlsson on paper had only 39 points. That's a career low during his time in a single season with the Vegas Golden Knights. But a lot of people, including myself, don't really judge the COVID season, the COVID year, that harshly because they had to shorten the season. Now, how did William Karlsson do come playoff time in that 2020-2021 season, well, the Vegas Golden Knights would make it back to the Western Conference Finals, and he would actually put up a commendable season, actually, in the playoffs that year. He only had 4 goals, but he racked up a dozen assists in 19 games and just barely missed a point per game in the playoffs that year in 2021. But I do want to mention this. At this point in his career, he is at 66 career playoff games, okay? And in that time, he has 46 points in 66 games. So as a playoff performer, he's putting up stats. But it was the regular season where people were concerned because, once again, if you're looking at it from a graph, it's all going downward. All right, you're not getting to that 78-point mark at that point. But okay, let's rebound, let's recover. Year 4, okay? This would be a situation where the Vegas Golden Knights, this would be his 5th year being with the Golden Knights organization, and this would be his 3rd year on that 8-year contract. And this is unfortunately where William Karlsson would suffer the most. And this is actually where William Karlsson would end up getting at his lowest point with the Vegas Golden Knights, as he would play in 67 out of 82 games that year. He would only get a dozen goals that season, rack up just barely 25 assists, and would have only 35 points with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, this one you can't excuse COVID for, because this was a situation where this is his season 29. This is age 29 season. This is season 5 of being with the Golden Knights. And ever since he signed that contract, his goals have went down. His assists have went down. His points have gone down. And he unfortunately couldn't, do better in the playoffs, because this is the only time in franchise history that the Vegas Golden Knights would miss the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, just to put this into perspective, okay, in the 3 years that William Karlsson, ever since signing that contract, he would play in over 180 games, 41 goals, and 120 points, okay? But 41 goals in 3 seasons. Keep in mind, the first year that William Karlsson was a Golden Knight, he had 43 goals. And that is what was alarming about William Karlsson, is that he went from scoring over 40 goals in just one single season to only getting 41 goals in 3 seasons combined with the Golden Knights. And then, of course, if you listen to the rumors and you listen to all the people who really don't know what they're talking about, they would talk about these trade rumors, right? During the 2022 offseason, you would see all these people talking about, are the Golden Knights going to buy out William Karlsson? Are the Golden Knights going to trade William Karlsson? Because the belief was his performance was not justifying a $5.9 million cap hit. And as somebody who looks at it subjectively, he wasn't. William Karlsson at that point was not making up for that $5.9 million cap hit. And the reason why is because that 21-22 season, just for comparison, he only had 12 goals that year. Well, if you look at the Vegas Golden Knights that season and you compare certain players, Jonathan Marchessault had a 30-goal season. Riley Smith had over 15 goals. Who else also had over 15 goals? You had guys like Nicholas Waugh. He had over 15 goals. Chandler Stevenson had a 20-goal performance. So you had a bunch of these players who were racking up goals. Even Jack Eichel, in just 25 games playing with the Vegas Golden Knights, have over a dozen goals when he was playing for the Golden Knights in that first season after he came back from being hurt. I looked at the Vegas Golden Knights and I saw that William Karlsson was in a weird situation where he's making just under $6 million, but he was ranked 10th in goals on the calendar for the Golden Knights. He would rank 7th in assists for the Golden Knights that year, and he was ranked 9th in points. Once again, hockey reference for my information here. So would William Karlsson begin to recover? As a matter of fact, yes, he would. And this ended up being a perfect time for William Karlsson to recover, as this would be the championship year for your Vegas Golden Knights. As the year that the Vegas Golden Knights would go all the way and win the Stanley Cup, he would play in all 82 games. He would have 14 goals, just under 40 assists, and for the first time since the second year of being in Vegas, William Karlsson would crack the 50-point mark at season's end. So his points went up by 18. His assists went up by 16, but his goals only went up by 2. So even though his goals slightly went up, it was his assists that went back to normal. Because I want to remind you, William Karlsson, throughout his first 3 seasons, was consistently getting 30 assists per year. So in their championship year, William Karlsson gets to 39 assists for Vegas. He rebounds in that category. And what ended up making all of it worth it is the fact that when the Vegas Golden Knights went to the Stanley Cup playoff that year and beat the Florida Panthers to win a Stanley Cup championship, William Karlsson's goal scoring would fire back, as he would average a half a goal per game in the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs. He would have 11 goals in 22 games. For reference, he had 14 goals in 82 games. So if you combine all of it, he had 25 goals in just under 105 games. That is solid for William Karlsson. But what he did this past season was incredible. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to break all of that down here on this episode of Vegas Hockey Hub, as we're talking about the resurgence of William Karlsson. And we're going to cover all of that in just a second here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, on Vegas Hockey Hub. Now, to start the season out, I want to remind you that this is a Vegas Golden Knights team that was coming off of winning a championship. So to have William Karlsson be in the middle 6 was something that they were looking forward to, because you had a first line of Ivan Barbashev, Jack Eichel, and Jonathan Marchessault, but then the middle 6 was just a kind of conveyor belt of just rotating players. That's really what it kind of felt like with the Vegas Golden Knights entering the season, is that they had a bunch of people that they could put in their middle 6 if they had to. You had your Michael Amatios, you had your Paul Cotters, you had your Mark Stones, your Brett Howdens, your Chandler Stevensons, and then you had your William Karlssons. And William Karlsson, because of his cap hit and because of being an original misfit, everyone knew that he was going to be a middle 6 center no matter what. But what was interesting about William Karlsson is that when he did the opening night and they did the banner ceremony, and I was there, when I had to be there, and all of that was happening, William Karlsson, he's only playing about 15, 16 minutes of ice time at the beginning of the year. It wasn't until about the end of October that the Vegas Golden Knights started having him at a bigger role, because William Karlsson was at the third line. He was at the second line. That is where William Karlsson's job was. But to start out the year, in the first 10 games of the year, which was in October, not only did the Vegas Golden Knights start out with a 9-0-1 record, which was amazing. I was so happy to do the recaps for this season. But William Karlsson would do something that a lot of people made a lot of attention to, myself included. William Karlsson had a 2-assist night against San Jose. Okay, all right, 2 points in the first 2 games. That's good. And then he had a 2-point night with a goal and an assist against the Dallas Stars. All right, 4 points in 4 games. I like what we're seeing there. And then William Karlsson went on a run where he had a point in 7 straight games. William Karlsson would pick up 2 more goals in October, one against Chicago and one against Chicago, except the first one was in Chicago and the second one was in Vegas. But what was incredible about William Karlsson being on the middle six is that he would have, at the end of October, 10 games in, 11 points on the year. So he was averaging over a point per game in the first 10 games of the year. People are wondering, is this the William Karlsson? Is he back with Vegas? Well, into the month of November, and we would actually see William Karlsson continue what we were looking for, as William Karlsson would end up in November, as the Vegas Golden Knights did slump a little bit. They only had, I think, 6 wins in that 14 games. But in those 14 games, William Karlsson would ramp up his goal scoring in an impactful way, as he would score goals in back-to-back games against Winnipeg and Colorado, would have a multi-goal game against Colorado, which was at T-Mobile Arena, and then he would continue his point-per-game pace, as after against Winnipeg and Colorado, he would have a 9-point streak with the Vegas Golden Knights. And at the end of November, William Karlsson had 8 goals in just November. He would have 11 goals at the end of 2 months. This felt like William Karlsson was coming back, and he was making a statement this year. I also want to remind you that this is the same William Karlsson that had 11 assists with those 11 goals. So 22 points in 24 games. And this really felt like we were seeing that 2017-2018 William Karlsson again. And there was a lot of people singing his praises that year. And I was one of them too. I remember that. But overall, when it came to William Karlsson, it was very fascinating that in the month of December, all right, getting towards the end of 2023, getting into this year of 2024, William Karlsson, he would play in those 13 games, and this would be the Vegas Golden Knights situation where he would pick up 4 more additional goals, making it a 15-goal mark in 37 games, and he would crack 17 assists in 37 games. So you are at a situation now where William Karlsson is at 32 points in 37 games. And when you're getting into the opening of January, you're really optimistic. You think that William Karlsson could become a force to be reckoned with, where William Karlsson is going to find a way to get to 40 goals again. Or maybe William Karlsson could find a way to get to 60 points on the year, heck, even potentially 70 points. But then bad news would happen. William Karlsson would get hurt at the Winter Classic, which I was at, by the way. I was at that Winter Classic. William Karlsson gets hurt, and he misses 12 games on the year. Okay? So William Karlsson would miss the whole rest of January and would miss the first 3 games of February. But when William Karlsson would come back from that injury, William Karlsson would make a statement, as William Karlsson would score a goal in his return against Edmonton, and then in the rest of February, he would end up with 5 goals in those 10 games. So he would score half a goal per the month of February. He also racked up 4 assists at that point. So William Karlsson has 20 goals and 21 assists at the 60 game mark. Just think about that for a minute. 60 games in, 20 goals, 21 assists. So he is 41 points into a 60 game campaign. People, including myself, are wondering, how is he going to end this? What is going to be the end game when it comes to William Karlsson here? Well, we found out that William Karlsson would end the month of March on an absolute tear, as by the 75 game mark, William Karlsson would rack up 6 goals, 6 assists for 12 points by the end of game 75. So with 7 games left in the year, William Karlsson would be at 26 goals and would be at 27 assists. So for a William Karlsson to have 53 points towards the back end with only 7 games left in the year, it was the resurgence of William Karlsson. Because I have to remind you what his season was the year before. 82 games, 14 goals, 39 assists, and 53 points. What was he at this point? 26 goals, 27 assists for 53 points. So he matched his season. He matched the season previously, but with 12 more goals and a little bit less in assists. And in the final 7 games of the season, he would pick up a goal and an assist against the Arizona Coyotes, getting him up to 27 goals and 28 assists. That is at 55 points. And then two games after that, against the Edmonton Oilers, William Karlsson would pick up another assist. That would get him to 26 goals and 28 assists. And then he would go on a multi-goal performance against the Colorado Avalanche and pick up a goal against the Minnesota Wild to get him to 30 goals on the year. And in the final game of the season, William Karlsson is only 1 assist shy from getting a 30-30 season, a 60-point campaign. And in that game against the Anaheim Ducks, William Karlsson would indeed get that assist he was looking for, as the Vegas Golden Knights would get a score from Jack Eichel. And just like that, William Karlsson would get his 30-30 campaign, a 60-point performance. And William Karlsson would end up resurging and getting his comeback and finally being able to get that contract and get the amount of money and say that this contract is justified for a $5.9 million cap hit. He proved a lot of people wrong. He proved a lot of doubters wrong. And for William Karlsson, I was so happy to see it. Now, I understand he didn't score a goal in the playoffs. Okay, we just saw that happen. Only had 2 points, which both being assists, in that 7-game series against Dallas. But for William Karlsson, I'm going to sit here and say I'm happy to see that he came back this year. I like what we saw from William Karlsson. And this 60-point campaign, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next year. So this is Vegas Hockey Hub. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele, and I do appreciate everyone who has been watching the show tonight. Hopefully you found this informal or informational. And this is a William Karlsson resurgence video talking about how he came back this season, and I'm so happy to see it. So until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights, go.